Welcome back to Otaku Daikun. Dai here. In this video, I'll be continuing my guide through the Tsukihime Remake. The goal is for you guys to be able to purchase and play the remake for yourselves, while still understanding what's going on, despite the fact that the game isn't in English yet. I'll be narrating the story, while commenting on fun aspects of the lore as we go. Last we left off, Shiki went home from school and saw Archewade, causing a murderous impulse to take over him. He went to her apartment and diced her into 17 pieces before coming to his senses. Confronted with this horror, he tries to deny any responsibility by deluding himself that it was all a bad dream. Obviously, Shiki didn't sleep well, remembering the nightmare all throughout. Hisui comes to his room to greet him with a clean uniform. Suspicious as she claims there wasn't any blood on the old one. She does mention he's dirty though, so it's time for a morning bath. With thoughts of gore fresh in his mind, Shiki has no appetite for breakfast. Kohaku ain't having it though and drags him into the dining room since he looks pale and malnourished. There, Shiki tries to brush off being found in the park passed out as no big deal. Of course, Akiha is worried and scolds him for his childish attitude. She pleads for him to be more careful going forward. The topic shifts to Akiha's school, the Asagami Private Girls Academy. We learn that it takes junior high students all the way to university. It's been around since the Meiji era and only survives through private donations. It's a boarding school, but Akiha has special permission to commute from home, a demand originally made by Makihisa to keep her at the mansion as much as possible. She used to spend half her days at the dorms, but now commutes all the time to be with her beloved Nissan. After breakfast, Shiki heads to school, and shockingly, spots Archewade waiting for him along the path. She's back to normal, as if he hadn't killed her at all. His delusion that it was all a dream comes crashing down. From atop the guardrail, she fidgets and sways her legs as if waiting for a lover, but he realizes she's probably waiting for her killer, wanting revenge. Their eyes meet, and with a look of satisfaction, Archewade starts to walk toward him. He tells her not to come closer, but she proceeds. In a bout of fear, Shiki runs away. He sprints his lungs out as she follows closely behind. No matter how hard he pushes himself, she remains close by like a ghost. His fear forces him to laugh as he continues to sprint, rushing forward until collapsing in an alleyway. He's been caught at a dead end, wallowing in confusion. When Archewade catches up though, she presents herself quite cordially. With a smile, she tosses him his school bag, which he left at her condo. After a full 18 hours, she's finally found him, and is pleased he remembers killing her. Despite Shiki's disbelief, Archewade has clearly come back to life because, as she puts it, she's a vampire. This makes him think of all the popular fictional vampires he's heard about, monsters who suck human blood. Yet it's the daytime, and vampires are supposed to hate the sunlight. Still, how else could she have revived after his attack? As ridiculous as it sounds, he's glad that Archewade is still alive, feeling like it somehow negates him from being a murderer. Regardless, he confronts her about yesterday, and is willing to hear her complaints. Archewade admits that her next logical step would be to take revenge on the man who killed her, but she has something to gain by keeping him alive. She says she'll forgive him if he's regretful about his actions and apologizes. Of course he's remorseful, having betrayed Aoko's teachings, and so he formally admits to his wrongdoing. He says he can't take it back, and it's not something he deserves to be forgiven for. Hearing his confession, Archewade remarks that he's a good person. In exchange for forgiveness, she asks that he help her hunt the vampires lurking in the city. Archewade elaborates that she's different from the vampires she hunts. The ones she's after have been causing the recent murders on the news. In that regard, she and Shiki share a common enemy. She was about to take care of them herself, but the plan got interrupted when Shiki randomly killed her. It was humiliating and extremely painful. She wanted to get revenge at first, but she's also in a predicament. Reviving from Shiki's attack took about 80% of her strength, and now she has to wait for that strength to recover. She reasons that until she's back to her previous state, she can have Shiki serve as her bodyguard. She wants him to protect her for the next 2 nights as she recovers, because during that time, she'll be vulnerable to vampire attacks. Before Shiki can give Archewade an answer, the two are interrupted by a black leopard peering at them from the alley's entrance. Such an animal would be normally found at the zoo or in the wild, not wandering the streets. The leopard lunges at Shiki, but before it can sink its fangs into his shoulder, Archewade pushes him to the side. While it hurt, it was for his own good. The leopard jumps between the alley's walls like a bolt of lightning, and Archewade counters its attack mid-air. She makes it clear that she's stronger than her opponent, and as they stare each other down, more enemies come. Shiki mistakes them for people, only to realize they're walking corpses set ablaze that Arcoade calls the dead. Distracted by the corpses, Shiki falls victim to another of the leopard's strikes. It tugs at the collar of his jacket, hurling him into a pile of trash. Luckily, the leopard stops its pursuit, instead witnessing as Arcoade thrashes through the smoldering corpses in a single strike of her claws, causing it to flee. Arcoade complains about having to use more of her power and chides Shiki for spacing out in battle. He's blown away by her devastating might. She brags that such an attack is normal for a vampire like her, only to bend forward from exhaustion. This is why she needs a bodyguard. The thought of fighting these foes frightens Shiki, and he desperately tries to explain that holding his own against them would be impossible. Arcoade doesn't believe him, given how efficiently he was able to kill her. Problem is, Shiki wasn't in his right mind when he did that. Regardless, Arcoade compromises, saying all he needs to do is watch over her while she sleeps. Reluctantly, Shiki agrees to help. Overjoyed, Arcoade introduces herself as a vampire called a true ancestor. She holds out her hand, and Shiki takes it, introducing himself as just an ordinary student who won't be of any use. Even so, Arcoade kindly holds him to his responsibility for killing her. At this point, the opening plays, though you can go look that up on your own. Can you believe that Sony, which owns Aniplex, accidentally pulled a copyright takedown on its own content? Yeesh. The next scene takes us to a young girl lost in the city at night. She and her boyfriend were investigating an urban legend and bit off more than they could chew. She's found herself in hellish darkness, in the lair of our newest dead apostle ancestor, Vlov Archangel. He pretty much replaces Nero Chaos from the original Tsukihime, and it's strange why Nasu did this. Regardless, Vlov's pretty fun, a freaky flame vampire. She fearfully proceeds through the lair's underground corridor, passing by Vlov's prisoners as they cry for help. Their bodies are too far gone, hanging limbless from the ceiling. The girl searches for an exit, a light of hope in this hellscape. Instead, she finds her body smothered in flames. She watches as her own flesh breaks down, her skin melting to expose the organs within. Still conscious, she screams of how she's on fire, almost admiring the flames consuming her. While laughing hysterically, she is run through from behind, and her blood becomes a feast for Vlov. Mumbling to himself, he mentions that despite the flames, he is cold. He seeks the true ancestor. Meanwhile, Shiki and Arcoade arrive at a really fancy hotel. She explains that her condo isn't safe, whereas the hotel is high up and has a good view of the city. Arcoade is apparently rich, so she fronts the bill. Shiki's a bit nervous to be in a hotel room alone with a girl, but he knows he's not here for hanky-panky. Yet. There's a lot he doesn't understand, so he starts by asking again why a vampire like her is going around killing other vampires. She explains that not all vampires are alike, and they aren't all allies either. The corpses they saw earlier, the dead, are familiars created when a vampire sucks people's blood. Based on how Shiki moved yesterday, Arcoade mistakenly hoped he was a member of the church. Now she's trying to accept that he's just an ordinary student like he says. It helps that Japan isn't really aligned with the church, being what she calls an atheist country. Arcoade doesn't like the church, so she's disappointed that she can't kill one of their people. Yikes! Tired, Arcoade decides to bounce onto the bed and get some sleep. Ordinary vampires like the one she's hunting don't go out during the day, so it should be safe. She tells Shiki to wake her when the sun goes down, before immediately passing out. He's surprised that Arcoade is letting her guard down around him. He admires her slumbering figure and considers trying to flee, doubting his ability to protect her. Thankfully, he recognizes that a promise is a promise, and that he owes her. He gets a bit flustered seeing Arcoade's sleeping face, so he drinks some water and tries to think clearly about his situation. Not trusting himself near her, he sits on the nearby sofa. It's so damn comfy that he falls asleep instead of guarding her. He has his very first dream about his accident. In a forest clearing, rich with the sound of cicadas, he and his sister Akiha, as children, are covered in blood. Shiki's hands are drenched as Akiha weeps. The voice of another boy calls his name as adults come running to the scene. Shiki feels that he had killed that boy. Of course, we know this is the incident when Shiki Tono, Makihisa's biological son, inverted and attacked Akiha. Our hero Shiki Nanaya protected her and took the hit himself. This is what truly injured him, but for now, it remains an ominous memory. A disappointed Archwade wakes him up from his slumber. The sun's already gone down and he didn't wake her up like he was supposed to. If she hadn't woken up on her own, they'd have been ripe for attacking. And just because vampires don't usually attack during the day, there's no guarantee they wouldn't try. While he finds it odd that she trusted him to watch over her in her sleep, she finds it equally odd that he let his guard down around her. Now that it's nighttime, the two are supposed to remain hiding in the hotel room. With time on their hands, Shiki inquires more about the enemy, starting with the familiars they encountered in the alley. This was one of the more boring sections of the original novel, with Archwade going into a large exposition dump on vampire lore. For the remake, instead of finding a way to weave these details into the actual story, Archwade literally whips out a whiteboard and starts giving a formal presentation. In other words, she took my job! Joke's on her. I'm gonna explain her explanation. Vampires invade towns to expand their territory. They look for proper candidates to suck blood from and make into familiars. Their victims can wind up like the dead, the corpses from earlier, or they can become vampires themselves, subservient to the lord that converts them. The head vampire establishes a lair and sleeps in its coffin during the daytime, having the familiars devour blood on its behalf. Thus, Archwade came to town hoping to find her target's lair. It was while she was investigating on foot that crazy-ass Shiki came and killed her. Anyway, vampires expand their domain in this roundabout way to hide themselves from humans, who would otherwise hunt them down as monsters. They don't want to attract the attention of, say, the Holy Church, so they lay low and have their familiars do much of the killing. Eventually, however, the head vampire will gain enough power to come out of hiding and ravage the town they've been lurking in, before moving on to a new area. Shiki has a hard time believing Archwade, at least given how different she is from what she just described. Archwade continues her lecture by explaining the difference between true ancestors and dead apostles. In other words, beings that started as vampires and those who later became them. The dead apostles are what she's been describing thus far. These bloodsuckers were originally humans or other animals that became vampiric after either being bitten or transforming themselves through magecraft. Once converted, the dead apostles gain a form of immortality, so long as they continue to consume blood. They use familiars to gather this blood for them, creating a network of greater and lesser vampires that mutually distribute the power they gain from blood to their leader. Powerful dead apostles have mystic eyes that enchant or otherwise hypnotize their prey when they lock eyes, and they can create shadows of themselves that either disappear at will or when defeated. Next is a reference to narrow chaos. Dead apostles can merge with the bodies of animals to supplement their declining bodies, though it comes at the risk of subduing their consciousness, so doing it too much isn't favorable. That's what the leopard was. Her explanation doesn't properly cover exactly what a true ancestor is, but before she delves deeper, she inquires if Shiki used some kind of conceptual weapon to kill her. He mentions his ability to see death lines, still not knowing their true nature. Archwade realizes he's describing the mystic eyes of death perception, and calls him a monster, clarifying that he has the power to see the death of all things. In other words, when he cuts the lines, he skips the causality that leads to one's death, and makes it occur instantaneously. Now that it's nighttime, she dares him to try his eyes on her once more. He takes off his glasses and, surprisingly, Archwade no longer has any lines. What he did to her was only possible during the daytime. Even if she still has lines under the moonlight, they're so faint and small that he wouldn't be able to cut them unless she stood still. Now, I want to clarify that this doesn't mean Archwade is invincible. She can still be killed, especially now that she's weakened, but rather she has no predetermined lifespan at night, which is why the eyes don't work. Other methods can still kill her. When Shiki puts his glasses back on, Archwade becomes curious, asking if she can hold them. He reluctantly hands them over, and just by handling them, she can tell they were made by the family holding Magic Blue, the fifth true magic. Understandably, she'd rather not fuck with whoever made the glasses. To clarify, these glasses, the Mystic Eye Killers, were made by Aoko's sister Toko Aozaki. Aoko stole them and made them stronger before giving them to Shiki 7 years ago. The two continue chatting into the night with no trouble. After 6 hours, Shiki has run out of things to talk about, much to Archwade's disappointment. She clearly doesn't get to do this very often, if ever. When Shiki realizes he hasn't eaten since breakfast, he brings up the topic of vampire food. Archwade teasingly asks him to guess how many people she sucked blood from. After a few wrong guesses, she confesses that she hasn't sucked a human's blood for the last 800 years because she's scared to do so. Just as Shiki starts to feel relieved, he gets hit with a dizzying headache and starts to sweat. The room is suddenly much hotter, even though the temperature reads as lower. He looks over at a monitor showing the hotel's cameras and notices the lobby is on fire, with Vlov standing in the middle of it. He's come for Arkoade. Despite the flames, there seems to be no response outside the building. Nobody is fleeing, and the sprinkler system hasn't activated. As Arkoade stands stiff and cautious, Shiki takes his knife out and steps into the hallway, which appears to be safe. He makes his way toward the elevator while taking off his glasses and rounds the bend as the elevator chime goes off. When the door opens, he is assaulted by the vision of two blood-soaked hounds feasting on corpses. They quickly turn to and charge at Shiki. Within seconds, the first hound reaches him, its gaping maw aimed at his throat. Just before its teeth sink in, however, Shiki instinctively fights back. His knife carves through the dog's head with ease, instantly ending its life and halting its momentum. The second hound moves in for the kill, and Shiki swings the knife into its mouth. Since there are no death lines there, the dog continues to try and maul Shiki's arm. It pushes him down and keeps attacking despite the knife in its throat. Shiki notices more lines behind the dog's head, but hesitates to fight back. Ultimately choosing to survive, he pushes the knife further into the dog's skull, piercing out the back to create a fountain of blood and brain matter. The dog is still alive, but pinned from the skull by Shiki's arm. To finish it off, Shiki grabs the knife with his other hand and carves into its death line. Despite this trauma, he is relatively unscathed. Before he can process his thoughts, the elevator rings again. The doors open once more, this time to an innocent woman trying to flee from the fires below. She runs forward, confident that she's escaped, only to find herself caught by flames from behind. She is pulled into Vlov's embrace, and before Shiki can react, the vampire plunges his teeth into her neck. Still alive, the woman gasps as Vlov gulps down her blood. Once he's had his fill, Vlov rips his teeth back out and discards the woman's body like it's rubbish. Flames envelop the corridor, spreading directly from Vlov himself. The closer he walks, the hotter it becomes. Shiki takes a good look and notices that not only is Vlov covered in death lines, there's also a concentrated point at the vampire's chest. Despite what Arkoade had told him about the mystic eyes of enchantment, Shiki cannot escape Vlov's cold stare. Trapped, Shiki watches as Vlov raises his hand to deliver a killing blow. Just in time, however, Arkoade pushes Shiki out of the way and takes the hit for him. She dispels the flames by swinging her claws, but it's clear she's in great pain. With Arkoade in the picture, Vlov completely ignores Shiki and reaches into his coat to pull out a weapon. Arkoade responds with golden eyes, commanding him to reveal his identity. Vlov stops in his tracks, but declares that he has no name to give. When she presses deeper, he gives the name Vlov Archangel. His aim is to claim Arkoade's heart, even if it means torching this filthy city. She guards Shiki from Vlov's flames until suddenly, the fires cease and Vlov retreats from the hotel, as it is now daytime. With the fight over, Arkoade collapses, her abdomen wounded by Vlov's earlier strike. Shocked, Shiki pleads for her to pull through. She says she's hit her limit and falls into his arms, but as Shiki cries out, he discovers that she's peacefully fallen asleep again. With the hotel compromised, he takes her back to the condo. There, he falls asleep, only to wake up to the sound of the news on TV. The hotel fire was eventually discovered, but rescuers have been unable to locate any of the 200 people staying there. They'd all been consumed by Vlov's flames. Arkoade is up and about, smiling despite last night's wounds, which she says aren't an issue. Shiki expresses his gratitude for her protection, to which she claims it's her fault for getting him involved in the first place. He counters by indicating that it was his fault for killing her, and he wonders why he even did it. She surmises he's just a natural-born killer, given how flawless his execution was, that it was something he'd done many times before. Of course, Shiki freaks out, screaming in her ear that this was the first time he's ever killed someone. The conversation reminds Shiki of just how horrible that killing was, and he more sincerely apologizes, admitting he doesn't deserve to live among society. Arkoade cheers him up, reasoning that because he's only ever killed her, and she didn't actually die, he isn't actually a murderer. While it's fair to feel remorse, he shouldn't let it consume him. The regret itself already indicates his kindness. As she continues to reason with him, she falls over, her wound not closed as she thought it was. Turns out, she tried to seal the gash on her abdomen with flex tape, and is now trying to sue Phil Swift for clout on TikTok. Shiki demands to see the wound, but she stubbornly rolls onto the bed to avoid him. Eventually, he convinces her to lift her shirt, revealing the bloody tape underneath. Seeing this pathetic attempt at bandaging, Shiki condemns her to the bed, borrows her wallet, and goes out to procure some proper first aid gear, even if vampires don't need it. She's happy to see him being so reliable. As he treats her, she writhes about, claiming it tickles, overall enjoying the experience. With that settled, they begin to discuss Vlov. It's humiliating, but Arcoade admits she's weaker than Vlov in her current state. She elaborates that he's one of the 27 Dead Apostle ancestors, a sort of ruling power among the Dead Apostles. Compared to others in the organization, Vlov must be fairly new, joining in the last 200 or so years. Even so, those flames are deadly, killing innocent people who just happen to be present when he searches for Arcoade. She lets Shiki know that he can choose to abandon the fight at this point if he wishes. Otherwise, there's no turning back. While he's terrified of the enemy, he reasons that he wouldn't be able to live with himself knowing he let a vampire like that continue terrorizing innocent victims. As a survivor of the hotel attack, he intends to defeat Vlov to prevent further disasters. Arcoade accepts the help, having faith that Shiki's eyes can deal a killing blow. Problem is, with those flames, he can't even get close, so Arcoade suggests waiting 3 days for her strength to return. Sadly, that would mean letting Vlov ravage the city unchecked. Thus, Shiki has to choose between a guaranteed victory or the chance of having many more people die. Unwilling to sacrifice more lives, he requests that Arcoade join him in killing Vlov tonight. It's a risk Shiki feels he can overcome with Arcoade helping out. She accepts, admitting she didn't even know if she could stay hidden those 3 days. Together they begin forming a plan to take Vlov down. The idea is to have Arcoade lure Vlov out and distract him so that Shiki can rush in for a surprise attack. She's confident that after modifying her body, she can withstand the 3,000 degrees Celsius that Vlov's flame has put out. To give Shiki an opening, she can restrain Vlov with spectral chains that she calls upon at will. There will be no room for hesitation, and if Shiki fails his surprise attack, then victory is lost. He has to go in with a killing intent from the start. The best venue will be the city's Central Park at night, which will hopefully be devoid of innocent bystanders. Now, this remake introduces some new terms for the Dead Apostle ancestors. Put bluntly, they're not just big hotshot vampires. Rather, a vampire becomes a Dead Apostle ancestor by inheriting what is called an idea blood with an associated principle. When this blood circulates throughout a vampire's body, it creates a powerful bounded field called a perceptual blood boundary, a manifestation of their vampiric thirst. The blood results in a curse, or principle, that can either plague or empower Dead Apostle ancestors. Our boy Vlov inherited his idea blood when he betrayed Zarya Offenbaum, the previous 19th seed of the Dead Apostle ancestors. As a fledgling vampire, the curse from this blood would have crushed him, but as a knight during the Dark Ages, he had the combat experience needed to stave off the curse and wield it as his own might. His flames appear to be a byproduct of resisting his blood's principle, which is actually something entirely different. At the park, Arcoade releases her vampiric wavelength, which she normally suppresses, to lure Vlov in. Shiki admits he's afraid of their opponent, prompting Arcoade to ask why he isn't afraid of her. By now, she's proven herself to be a very special vampire, someone who doesn't seem to be a threat to humans. She is quite adorable, when you're on her side anyway. While they wait, Vlov, in his lair beneath the city station, begins to succumb to his vampiric principle, freezing, and as he fights it off, his body melts and distorts. As his sanity wanes, he ruminates on his past, how he left behind his beloved wives and traveled overseas in an attempt to stabilize himself. In a desperate thirst for blood, he emerges into the city, setting the station ablaze, consuming the crowd en masse, turning them into more of the dead. The burning corpses erupt, drenching the sky in a blood rain. Shiki and Arcoade rush to the station, but find the path blocked off. They head to an alleyway, where Arcoade grabs Shiki by the arm and leaps high into the air. The two soar above the city in search of a better vantage point. As they fly, she tells him to keep his mouth shut or he'll bite his tongue. They make a landing on a tall skyscraper, overlooking Vlov's fire, and witness as surviving policemen band together to shoot at Vlov. Their attacks have no effect, instead inciting hordes of the dead to overpower them. The destruction is far greater than anything the original Tsukihime had to offer. Arcoade stares on, wondering why the church hasn't responded to the disaster. With their strategy up in smoke, Shiki asks if there's anything Arcoade can do to reverse the situation. She decides to drop down on Vlov from above and leaps from the building. She plummets downward, but as if riding the wind, she suddenly flies up into the light of the moon. Her vision turns from the sky toward the ground and rockets toward the earth like a shooting star. She collides with Vlov, her momentum blowing away the flames and launching rubble about like a storm. Her impact creates a large crater, at least 40 meters deep, in the center of the station. Despite clearing the area and landing a devastating blow, Vlov still survives the aerial strike. While the battle continues down below, Shiki sprints his way to the surface, cutting his way through any locked doors in the skyscraper. He descends in the elevator, hoping Arcoade is still safe. At the bottom, he makes his way to the crater's edge and watches the battle from below. Vlov appears unaffected by the strike, and Arcoade is keeping up the good fight. The two combatants clash, with Arcoade's martial arts pitted against Vlov's use of a sword. Her claws manage to push Vlov back and even cut him to the bone. Sadly, his wounds seem to heal rapidly, but she doesn't mind. In fact, she appears to enjoy the hunt. It becomes clear that Arcoade's dive bomb attack really did harm Vlov. While it might not show, the strike took him a lot of energy to recover from. She remains in control while he strikes through his exhaustion. Pushed back, he screams while unleashing a tall pillar of flames. They reach out in the shape of hands, clasping down around Arcoade's entire body. The heat must easily exceed 3,000 degrees, but she endures, emerging from the flames in a new form. Adorned with a monochromatic battle dress, she hops through the fire with ease. It's as if Vlov's attacks now seem to obey her, parting to the side as she gleefully charges in and barrages him with swipes from her claws. His blade shatters, and in desperation, he screams of how cold he is. When Vlov attempts to leap back and gain distance, Arcoade responds by tethering him, not with the chains she used earlier, but with a swarm of intricate vines. Even when he incinerates the vines, they simply grow back, holding him captive while Arcoade rushes in for a finishing blow. As a bystander, Shiki feels something is off, that perhaps Vlov has other options at his disposal. Regardless, he can do nothing but watch as Arcoade charges forward and pierces Vlov through the heart. What seems like a fatal strike instead awakens his true power, his principle of freezing. He responds to Arcoade's attack by unleashing his own, launching her away with a trail of sharp ice. Thankfully, she stands up unharmed and confirms that Vlov must have inherited his idea blood from his former master Zarya. He admits it and draws forth his ice lance. Unafraid, Arcoade rushes forward, only to fall right into his greatest attack yet. A torrential blizzard expands from his body, and as she tries to shield herself from the cold, he slams his spear right into her. Once more, Arcoade is sent flying back, this time with her flame dress shattering. In her original form, she lay bloodied on the frozen earth. Assuming his own victory, Vlov summons more of his dead familiars to collect her body. Shiki watches just outside the frozen domain, understanding how hostile that environment would be for a mere mortal. Yet, he can't just stand by as the dead consume his partner. He tosses reason to the wind and jumps into the crater. Transforming his fear into rage, Shiki removes his glasses while sliding down the hill, reasoning that he has, at most, 3 minutes before succumbing to the cold. Knife in hand, he rushes to Arcoade's side, slicing through the dead in his path. He wakes her up, only for her to beg him to flee. Instead, he asks her to support him for the next 3 minutes. Shiki sprints forward, tearing through more of the dead on his way toward Vlov. He is yet to be perceived as a threat, and is banking on this chance to close the gap between them. Vlov prepares to swat Shiki down like a bothersome fly, only to sense danger at the last moment. The two jump away from each other. The closer Shiki gets, the colder it becomes, and the less his body reacts how he wants it to. Vlov is perplexed by the danger he sensed, and decides not to take any chances. He conjures sharp icicles and hurls them from a distance. Acting on his instincts, Shiki promptly slices through the icicles, only to be bombarded by more. He remains on the defensive, for both his sake and Arcoade's, hoping to discover a weakness to exploit. Vlov recalls his lance, and readies an even larger assortment of projectiles, more than Shiki can hope to repel. Confronted with certain death, Shiki charges in, risking his own body to close in on Vlov. One of the icicles that slips past hits Arcuate in the face, jolting her awake. In retaliation, she rips into and hurls part of the ground at Vlov, bringing the fight to a standstill. From what Shiki has observed, Vlov cannot move freely while channeling the cold, and must concentrate his power in certain directions at a time. With a plan in mind, Shiki retreats to Arcuate and asks her to hurl some more debris. Lacking the time to explain, he gains her trust before Vlov launches more projectiles. As instructed, Arcuate digs into the ground, uplifting an assortment of earthen chunks. Expecting this to be a cover for a frontal attack, Vlov directs his freezing to clear the debris in front of him while ignoring the pieces falling from above. This is Shiki's chance to strike. Rather than a shield, Shiki uses the debris as transportation. When Vlov looks up, he sees Shiki tied to a slab of rock using Arcuate's vines. The vines then tie all the falling rocks together into a bridge aimed straight at Vlov. Not expecting to survive this attack, Shiki chops himself free of the vines and plunges down the pathway. Naturally, Vlov fires icicles at Shiki, but the majority of his cold aura is still directed laterally. Some of the icicles strike Shiki, but not enough to halt his descent. He barely manages to dodge Vlov's spear, take damage through another barrage of ice, and set his sight upon Vlov's death point. As a final defense, Vlov tries to draw his shattered sword, but is too late. Shiki lands a fatal slash that severs his existence. Vlov begins to dissipate, returning the temperature to normal. Under the brilliant light of vanishing frost, Shiki collapses on the ground, completely exhausted and horribly wounded. Arcuate quickly comes to check on and congratulate him on his victory. The death toll isn't as severe as it seems, because the moment she learned of Vlov's true principle, she coated the area in a repellent, preventing temperature loss outside the crater. In other words, she took that critical hit from Vlov's spear in order to protect the city Shiki cares about. She wanted to honor Shiki's praise for not being harmful to humans. She even has a way of healing Shiki's wounds, fusing his body with the remains of Vlov's familiars. With gratitude, Arcuate escorts a sleeping Shiki to his mansion on the hill. In the aftermath of their battle, we finally find out what the church is up to. One of the church's priests, a boy named Mario Gallo Bestino, evaluates the damage with his two subordinates, Carius Berlusconi and Ugo Ando. While they didn't do jack to help during the fight, they do plan to help cover up the incident while clearing out the remaining vampires. Mario, in particular, asks to get in contact with two agents dispatched from the church's burial agency. Holy cow! Now that concludes the first major arc of Arcuate's story. As usual, keep giving these videos love, and I'll keep making them. That means comment your thoughts, like the video, and most importantly, share it with friends so I can reach a wider audience. Thanks for watching!
If you enjoy this channel, help us grow by liking, commenting, sharing the video, subscribing to Otaku Daikun, and
most of all, smashing that notification bell so you don't miss out on all of our anime discussion, lore, or Let's Play content.
You can support us directly through Patreon, Subscribestar, or our YouTube membership, all of which come with benefits like exclusive vids and early access.
As always,
celebrate your fandom!